for having me here. My name's John Murray. I'm the Executive Director of the Upper Midwest Emmys. When people ask me what I do for a living, I'm a storyteller. That's what I do, is I tell stories. Ultimately, you can succeed with great content. You have good creativity with it, and the execution means it's clean, that you have a good, clean production. That's it. But it all starts with content, the information that you want to deliver. You know, some of these shows would do well if you could produce a story about the subject, okay? So that gives the viewer time to digest the information that you want to give them, then bring in your guests to discuss it. Putting a person in the story versus they're watching it from afar. I mean, you feel all throughout that story that you are at these places. Everything makes a sound. Okay, so when I heard that you guys are getting the shotgun microphones here, I think that's absolutely fabulous, because this is where you can get really, there's a difference between nat noise and nat sound. Okay, nat noise is shooting this from across the room and hearing the echo from across the room. Nat sound would be right in here close with a camera and a microphone, being able to hear that click like it's nice and crisp. I also don't think he wrote as much as most of us want to write. He logged all of the tape, knew where all the sound bites were going in order, and then weaved the writing through it. Okay, a lot of us start by, we write the entire story and then we throw in the sound bites. Put your sound bites and stuff in there first, okay? Give your sense of self, because we're telling their story, right? You have to remember, it's their story, it's not our story. What I do a lot of times is when I'm setting up an interview, first thing I do is I get the microphone on the person, okay? And then I'm going to say, I need to take some time, because I want them to forget about this. Immediately when you put a microphone on somebody, they're just a little self-conscious. So I put the microphone on them first. Then I start setting up my lights, but I'm interviewing them as I'm setting everything up. It helps me, A, get an understanding of what I can expect when I interview them, and B, it gives them a chance to get it through their lips once. And of course, the camera was down there, so when she's pulling up the camera, they're not shooting it from up here. The camera's down here, so you can see the records coming out. I guess what you're looking at as a starting point is I try to tell what my story is in one sentence. If I can sum up my story in one sentence, then I can start building my beginning, my middle, and my end. Now have fun with it. Okay, so what's my beginning gonna be? What's my middle gonna be? What's my end gonna be? Beginning shots and ending shots to me have the same value to them. And it's sad because some people in their stories kind of drop off the ending, because it's your first impression, it's your last impression. Some of the best shots that you remember are the first shots and the last shots. Every time I work on a story, I try to use my first 5 to 10 seconds of either nat sound, sound bites, or some sort of visual sequence to put the people in the story. I love the tripod, but I like it at different angles. So to me, every story that I shoot has some sort of high angle, some sort of low angle, some sort of depth of field. I mean, I consciously think of that every time I shoot. If somebody was running this camera, I would shoot them from over here, I would shoot them here, but I would shoot their eyes, their hands. I would get in this angle, look at point of view as, you know, when I say point of view, what would it be like if I'm just standing here as a viewer looking at somebody? If you want to develop a long-range system of shows, you need to get 3 or 4 done first before you even start airing. So take your time and produce one of our 3 shows. Look at your calendar. When can they air? So, and work on those in advance so they are ready to go. And then you can always be working ahead. It's so much easier to work ahead than trying to get caught up. Then sometimes, depending upon it, I'll just stop the interview there, and if there's another angle from the room, I'll say, do you mind, I know we're gonna use a lot of sound bites from you, and I want to keep it looking fresh. It's always about, I'm trying to make you look good. And when you do that, sure, take your time, whatever you need. So I do that, I vary it up, because I just don't want people to see the same talking head every time I have to interview somebody in a story. Three-point lighting, I'm sure some of you heard of it, some of you may not. Here, if I'm interviewing a studio or lighting a studio, each person has 3 lights, key, back, fill. Make sure that that audio is consistent, or if you need to, mix it a little bit here and there, you just want it to be clean in the background. Because any distraction that the viewer has, whether it's visually or through the audio, it's a distraction with what you're saying. And as soon as you have to make your viewer start to think, they're not listening to you anymore. They're trying to figure out what was just going on. The one thing that I strongly urge you is that, especially in this day and age of nonlinear editing and special effects, is that you let your effects be content driven. Don't use the effects for the sake of the effects, but how are the effects going to enhance your content? You just look at it and you judge it based on 3 criteria. Can you guess what those are? I'll give you a hint. The first one's content. What's the second one? What's the name of today's session? Content, creativity, and execution. That's what they're judged on. Do they have good content? Did they creatively give you that information so that you can easily understand it? And execution. Did they pull it off cleanly? I believe I achieve. I think to myself, wide, medium, tight, super tight, get the moment. The moment makes it. The wide, medium, tight, super tight helps me edit so I can get to the moment. Close-ups are king. Close-ups will get you out of any editing jam that you have. If you want to get from one scene to another, best way to do it, get a close-up in there. Another good way of thinking about telling your segments or producing your segments or your shows, sell, tell, tag. The intro into your tape piece or into the meat of your segment, whether it's interview or whether it's a story, is you're selling the story. The best way to do that is to get through to the viewer, why is this story important to them? Okay? That's the only way you're going to get them to care, and you have to sell them out. You're using your interview or your taped piece or whatnot to tell the story. Okay? Your end is the tag. This is your wrap-up. Where can I go for more information? Better have a phone number, better have a web address. You always want to tell people where they can go to get more.